After a long separation, a narcissist's focus often centers on regaining control and influence rather than seeking genuine closeness. Their interest is rarely about mutual care or shared connection. Instead, it revolves around seeing whether the emotional power they once held still exists. They may subtly observe how you respond to messages, interactions, or even memories of the past. This monitoring allows them to gauge whether you are still emotionally invested in ways that benefit them. The behaviors they display can seem familiar, comforting, or even flattering, but these are often carefully calculated to elicit reactions that reinforce their sense of importance. By appealing to emotions and memories, they can create a scenario where you may unknowingly respond in ways that validate their influence. Understanding this dynamic is essential because it highlights the difference between genuine reconnection and strategic manipulation. Recognizing that their behaviors are often driven by a desire for control allows you to respond consciously rather than react impulsively, ensuring that your boundaries remain intact while protecting your emotional well-being. A narcissist may also attempt to provoke nostalgia by invoking shared experiences from the past. They know that familiar memories can stir feelings of attachment or comfort, and they use this to their advantage. By referencing moments where you felt understood, admired, or valued, they create situations that tempt you to engage, reminisce, or respond emotionally. These gestures are not about rebuilding mutual trust or emotional intimacy, but about seeing whether you are still susceptible to influence. The subtlety of this approach can make it difficult to distinguish between genuine affection and manipulative intent because it taps into real, positive memories. Becoming aware of this pattern allows you to differentiate between healthy interactions and those designed to test your emotional responses. Maintaining this awareness ensures that your engagement is intentional, measured, and based on your own needs, rather than a reactivation of old patterns that primarily serve the narcissist. They may also focus on eliciting emotional vulnerability, intentionally or indirectly encouraging personal sharing, expressions of longing, or reactions that reveal attachment. While these behaviors can appear to be nurturing, their real purpose is to access insight into your current emotional state and determine how much influence they retain. By observing your openness or responsiveness, they can assess whether there are opportunities to draw you back into a dynamic that prioritizes their needs over your own. Recognizing this underlying intention allows you to set firm boundaries and control what you reveal. It empowers you to engage from a position of strength, ensuring that emotional exchanges are grounded in self-awareness rather than manipulation. Understanding these subtle dynamics equips you to navigate interactions with clarity, maintaining your autonomy and emotional health even in situations where the narcissist appears charming, attentive, or familiar. Attention-seeking behaviors are another tool they use to measure engagement. Compliments, gestures of admiration, or small acts of apparent warmth are often calculated to elicit reactions that confirm lingering interest. These actions are rarely about authentic connection. Instead, they are designed to draw your focus, gauge your responsiveness, and reinforce their perceived importance. When you recognize these strategies, you can respond thoughtfully rather than automatically, preventing your energy and attention from being redirected in ways that compromise your boundaries. Mirroring past successful patterns, testing limits, and manipulating timing are all additional tactics intended to assess your emotional availability. Awareness of these behaviors allows you to respond intentionally, maintaining self-respect and avoiding cycles of engagement that primarily benefit the narcissist rather than supporting a healthy reconnection. By observing these strategies with clarity, you can protect your autonomy while understanding the motivations behind their actions, ultimately ensuring that your responses are deliberate and grounded in your own emotional priorities. After a long separation, a narcissist often tries to reconnect by appealing to nostalgia and shared history. Their goal is to create situations where you recall past positive experiences and emotional moments, subtly prompting engagement. They may mention memories that were significant or emotionally charged. Knowing these recollections can stir attachment and curiosity. This is not driven by genuine interest in rebuilding a healthy connection, but by a desire to see whether you still respond to them in ways that validate their importance. By evoking familiarity, they attempt to create a sense of comfort and draw you into interactions that may feel safe or enticing. Recognizing this strategy allows you to understand that their actions are about influence, not authentic reconnection. Maintaining this awareness is crucial because without it, you may inadvertently engage in patterns that reignite old dynamics, giving them emotional leverage. Understanding the underlying intent helps you navigate interactions with intentionality, ensuring that any engagement is based on your conscious choice rather than reflexive emotional pull. By observing these behaviors with clarity, you can protect your emotional boundaries while remaining aware of the subtle ways a narcissist may seek attention or validation. A key tactic they use involves eliciting emotional vulnerability. After a long separation, a narcissist may create situations that encourage you to reveal personal feelings, desires, or reflections about the past. This is rarely motivated by empathy or care. Instead, it is a method to gauge your emotional state and measure how much influence they still hold. They may craft conversations or scenarios that make sharing feel natural, inviting, or even flattering, all to assess your receptiveness. By drawing out vulnerability, they gain insight into your current emotional availability and can determine opportunities to regain attention or control. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to manage what you share and maintain autonomy over your emotions. You can engage in conversations thoughtfully, protecting your emotional well-being and ensuring that interactions do not unintentionally reinforce their sense of power. Awareness of these subtle manipulations is essential for maintaining clarity and preventing reactive patterns that may have occurred in the past. Attention-focused behaviors are another way a narcissist gauges your response. They may give compliments, show interest in your life, or perform gestures designed to attract your focus, all to see if you react with curiosity or attachment. These behaviors are often carefully calibrated to evoke engagement, ensuring that your energy is directed toward them. They may also mirror past routines, recreate familiar emotional cues, or test boundaries to see if you are still emotionally available. Understanding these patterns empowers you to respond intentionally rather than reactively, preserving your boundaries while preventing them from reigniting old cycles of influence. Recognizing the purpose behind these actions, attention-seeking, influence, and testing responsiveness allows you to maintain self-respect and emotional autonomy. It ensures that any engagement is deliberate and grounded in your priorities rather than the narcissist's agenda. By observing timing, emotional cues, and attempts at mirroring, you can respond with clarity, protecting yourself while understanding the underlying motivation behind their behaviors. After a long separation, one of the subtle behaviors a narcissist seeks is confirmation of lingering emotional influence. They are often less interested in mutual reconnection and more focused on assessing whether you still respond to their presence, attention, or gestures in ways that validate their sense of control. This can be done through carefully timed messages, indirect references to shared history, or seemingly casual interactions that are designed to provoke reflection, curiosity, or attachment. The narcissist's approach often taps into familiar patterns that once elicited emotional responsiveness, creating a sense of comfort while masking the underlying intent of influence. Understanding this is crucial because it helps you differentiate between interactions that are genuinely reciprocal and those that are primarily designed to test your boundaries or emotional availability. Awareness allows you to engage thoughtfully and maintain clarity rather than reacting reflexively to behaviors that are calculated to measure your interest, attention, or emotional engagement. Recognizing the motivation behind these actions empowers you to respond from a position of strength, ensuring that your choices reflect your priorities and protect your autonomy, rather than unwittingly reinforcing the narcissist's desire for control. A common tactic involves subtly reintroducing emotional intimacy, often through shared memories or references to moments when you felt connected. By invoking nostalgia, a narcissist attempts to elicit feelings of comfort, familiarity, or attachment, testing whether those old emotional connections still influence your reactions. This is not an expression of genuine care, but a strategic move to observe whether you are susceptible to engagement that may rekindle old patterns. The subtlety of this approach can make it challenging to identify because it draws upon authentic memories and emotions. Awareness of this pattern is critical to maintaining healthy boundaries, as it allows you to consciously evaluate your responses and prevent being drawn into interactions that primarily serve the narcissist's desire for validation. By recognizing these behaviors as mechanisms of influence rather than authentic reconnection, you create space to navigate interactions with intentionality, preserving your emotional well-being while maintaining clarity about the underlying motives. They may also employ attention-focused strategies to observe your reactions and measure your emotional availability. Compliments, gestures of interest, or behaviors that appear flattering are often designed to provoke engagement, ensuring that your attention remains directed toward them. These behaviors are rarely about authentic emotional connection. Instead, they serve as tools to assess whether you still respond in ways that reinforce their perceived importance. Mirroring past successful patterns, testing boundaries, and manipulating timing are additional strategies used to determine your current level of receptiveness. Understanding these patterns enables you to maintain firm boundaries and respond intentionally rather than impulsively. By observing the motives behind these actions, you can preserve self-respect and avoid being drawn back into cycles of influence that prioritize their needs over your autonomy. Awareness of these subtle tactics equips you with the insight necessary to respond thoughtfully, protecting your emotional health while recognizing the underlying motivations of the narcissist's behaviors. After a long separation, narcissists often engage in behaviors designed to test emotional boundaries and assess the lingering influence they hold. Their focus is rarely on mutual connection or genuine emotional intimacy. Instead, it revolves around observing your reactions to subtle prompts. They may reach out in ways that seem casual, thoughtful, or even complimentary, but these gestures are typically calculated to gauge how much attention, energy, or emotional engagement you are willing to offer. This approach allows them to measure whether old patterns of responsiveness remain active and to determine how much control they still exert over your emotions. Recognizing this dynamic is essential because it clarifies that the interaction is about influence rather than authentic reconnection. By understanding their motivation, you can respond with intentionality, maintaining healthy boundaries, and ensuring that your emotional energy is directed according to your priorities rather than being drawn into cycles that primarily serve the narcissist's agenda. Awareness transforms these encounters from reactive situations into opportunities for conscious choice, preserving your autonomy while observing their subtle strategies. Another key strategy narcissists use after separation is to subtly recreate familiarity and comfort from the past. By mirroring behaviors, referencing shared routines, or recalling meaningful memories, they attempt to evoke nostalgia and attachment. This tactic is designed to create a sense of safety and emotional resonance, encouraging engagement that may feel natural or even pleasant. However, the purpose is rarely about mutual care. It is primarily about assessing your emotional receptivity and ability to be influenced. Being aware of this pattern allows you to differentiate between genuine connection and manipulation disguised as familiarity. It helps you recognize when behaviors are intended to stimulate response rather than foster mutual understanding. By maintaining clarity about these tactics, you can consciously navigate interactions, ensuring that your engagement is grounded in intentional choice rather than reflexive emotional pull. Understanding this dynamic protects your emotional well-being while enabling you to observe and respond thoughtfully to the narcissist's calculated strategies. Testing emotional availability is another subtle behavior often displayed by narcissists. They may introduce scenarios that encourage sharing personal thoughts, feelings, or reflections, not out of empathy, but to observe your vulnerability and gauge the level of influence they still retain. These interactions are often framed in ways that feel natural, inviting, or flattering, prompting you to reveal insights about your emotional state. Recognizing this approach allows you to manage what you share and maintain control over your own emotional boundaries. By understanding that these behaviors are tools for observation rather than genuine emotional reciprocity, you can protect your autonomy and engage in interactions thoughtfully. Awareness of this pattern ensures that your responses are deliberate and rooted in self-respect, reducing the risk of being drawn back into cycles that reinforce the narcissist's influence rather than supporting your emotional health and independence. Attention-seeking and subtle manipulation often accompany these strategies. Narcissists may give compliments, show interest in your life, or create opportunities for engagement that prompt a response. They may also test boundaries, recreate successful past dynamics, or manipulate timing to heighten focus on themselves and gauge your reactions. Recognizing these behaviors enables you to respond consciously, maintain emotional autonomy, and avoid falling back into old patterns of influence. Understanding the intent behind their actions, validation seeking, control, and assessment of emotional availability equips you to maintain clarity, set firm boundaries, and engage only on terms that prioritize your well-being. Observing these tactics with awareness empowers you to protect your energy, respond thoughtfully, and navigate interactions without compromising your emotional stability, ensuring that any engagement remains intentional and grounded in your priorities rather than serving their agenda. After a long separation, a narcissist's primary interest often centers on testing whether their influence over you still exists. They are rarely motivated by genuine desire for emotional closeness. Instead, they seek reassurance that you remain responsive to their presence, attention, or gestures. These interactions are often subtle, taking the form of casual messages, unexpected compliments, or references to shared experiences. Each of these actions serves as a way to observe your reactions, gauge lingering attachment, and measure the potential for future influence. Recognizing this is essential because it highlights that their focus is on power dynamics rather than authentic reconnection. By understanding the intent behind these behaviors, you can engage with clarity and intentionality, maintaining your boundaries while avoiding old patterns that may compromise your emotional autonomy. Awareness allows you to approach